Do you really think you can save them? That's a real line that's buried in the dialogue of one of the hardest quest chains in the game. Most players just clicked through it, but if you read into it just a little bit closer, you realize this pretty much sums up the crux of the game. That piece of skepticism is something that sits at the back of every player's mind, because on at least 3 separate occasions, Gielinor came within a hair's breadth of becoming completely, irreversibly destroyed. And it's not the usual, the villain wins and we just respawn in Lumbridge and carry on. I mean fully gone. As in every single NPC and their histories wiped, every city reduced to ash, the laws and reality themselves rewritten. So today, we're going back and we're rereading the core dialogue we have all been guilty of skipping. We are pulling back the lore books nobody's bothered to open, and we're going to look with fresh eyes at exactly how close this world came to being wiped from existence, and why the margin between quest complete and total annihilation was every single time measured in minutes. These are the near misses you've never really thought about. Let's start with the one I think people understand the least, Desert Treasure 2, because on the surface it looks like a classic setup, ancient magic with creepy ruins and those spooky underground locations. You do what you would expect from a quest. You fight bosses, you collect some medallions, and somewhere between the puzzles and death's coffer fees, the actual horror of what's happening slips right past you. What's actually going on in Desert Treasure 2 is so much worse than the quest framing suggests. When you reach the ancient vault, the game presents it as a goal to retrieve medallions of the Forgotten Four, unseal the way in, and find the treasure. This is standard quest stuff, although there is more to it than that. Here is what the vault actually contains: the Elder Horn, an artifact described by Azanadra himself, who was one of the most powerful Majorat to have ever existed, as extremely powerful and ancient, and capable of granting absolute control and subjugating entire armies without lifting a finger. That's what the Forgotten Four, Vardorvis, Perseria, Duke Succulus, and the Whisperer, were sealing away. Their medallions were locks, and Perseria, specifically, made a choice. She deliberately delivered a fake Elderhorn to the east and hid the real one here, sealed behind 4 of the most dangerous beings in Zerosian history. The vault was never meant to be opened, and the Forgotten Four were the last line of defense for an artifact that, if in the wrong hands, can end civilizations and lead to total domination. That's what Sliske walks away with at the end. Except that's not even the near miss that we're here to talk about. See, beneath the ruins of Camdozel, through a sinkhole, there lies the Lassar Undercity. And the Lassar Undercity has a problem to do with a totem. One that, according to the Imcando Dwarf named Kettler, or at least somebody presenting themselves as Kettler, is actively linking the real world to the Shadow Realm. The shadows bleeding through aren't a metaphor. They're actual black puddle-like portals that function as entry points, tentacles that block routes and spread from the cathedral outwards, lost souls that drain your grip on reality just by getting near you. This Shadow Realm in old-school RuneScape lore is not to be mistaken for a dark version of the map. It exists in the same physical space as Gielinor, overlapping it completely, operating on different rules. Step into it without protection and your sanity slips and descends. Every tick you spend in there, it goes further down. The lost souls accelerate it, and if you hit 0, you start to take rapid damage, and your reality pulls apart. The totem is the bridge that lets the shadow bleed into the Undercity. Those black puddles, the tentacles strangling the sunken cathedral, the corruption clinging to everything down there. And the Whisperer is at the heart of it, the boss you face in the Shadow Realm itself. Well, at least in parts of the fight. So what happens if you fail? Well, the lore is precise about this. After the totem is destroyed, the player is told, quote, "Without it, the darkness could not spread beyond the Undercity, but it still remains," unquote. That single line is the entire stakes of this segment laid out plainly. The totem is the conduit, or in other words, the very thing letting the shadow bleed into Gielinor from the ruins of the ancient city buried beneath the surface. Without it destroyed, that link stays open. The darkness isn't contained to the Undercity, it will spread through the ruins, upward, outward, following whatever conduit it can find. The shadow doesn't move fast simply because it doesn't need to. You saw what it did to a contained space, with tentacles blocking every passage, lost souls wandering corridors that used to be homes, an entire Undercity reduced to a place where sanity is a resource that runs out. But imagine if you remove the boundary and let it reach the surface. From all accounts, it doesn't seem to kill in the traditional sense. Rather, it overwrites. Everything the shadow touches loses coherence, their identity, purpose, the basic structure of what something was. The Undercity is the preview of what the rest of the map could look like, given enough time and no one to stop it. Yet, there is something that reframes this entire angle. The person who guides you through the Undercity and tells you about the totem, who builds your shadow blockers and torches, who warns you that time is running out, is an Imcando Dwarf named Kettler, a survivor that seems to have been fighting the shadow alone before you arrived. And massive spoiler warning here, Kettler was Sliske the whole entire time. Sliske is one of the most manipulative Majorat in Gielinor, a being who spent the entire quest running separate identities simultaneously and had assumed Kettler's form specifically to move you through the Undercity, towards the Whisperer, towards the Vault, doing all this while testing you, evaluating whether you were worthy of becoming one of his wights, the same way the Barrows brothers had been taken before you. Every piece of guidance you received, every schematic, every warning, every moment where Kettler seemed like a genuine ally, navigating genuine danger alongside you, was coming from Sliske. This is a near miss that is narrower than it first appears, because the very person who destroyed the totem, the act that kept the darkness from spreading beyond the Undercity, well, in the end, that was Sliske's decision to make, not yours. It is important to remember that the Shadow Realm didn't recede because you stopped it, but because the person manipulating you from the start decided the Undercity had served its purpose. The quest log says quest complete, but somewhere in what's left of the Lassar Undercity, the darkness is still there and contained, at least for now, because of a sequence of events that nearly went very differently. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to not view the Shadow Realm like another place, but to view it like a parasite. A parasite that has found an open wound to fester in, and that wound is still here. Just a second here to talk to you guys from the heart. I have been blown away by your comments and the fact that people are actually watching the content I'm creating. Thank you so much for subscribing and coming back each week for another dose of old school RuneScape lore. I've also been asked if there's any other ways to support the channel, and so today, I'm very excited to announce my brand new channel memberships. So far, we have 4 tiers: Dubious Gods, Demigods, OG Gods, and Elder Gods. You'll unlock a bunch of new features like custom badges, emotes, custom polls, video shoutouts, priority comments, and in-game activities. If you've got a spare couple of bucks and enjoy what I'm doing here, the support would be extremely appreciated. That's enough, back to the video. Let's talk about the plan that took centuries to execute. Nope, not decades, literal centuries. Amascut, the Devourer, formerly the goddess of rebirth, daughter of Tumakin and Elidnus, didn't snap one day and decide to burn the desert down. She built towards something, extremely methodically and patiently, through one betrayal at a time. And by the time anyone realized what she was actually doing, 4 demigods were already imprisoned. Before the plan, there was a person, because this is where the tragedy lives, and it matters for understanding the scale of what almost happened. Amascut wasn't always the Devourer. She was the goddess of rebirth, and part of the Menethite pantheon, one of the ruling divine families of the Caridian Empire. She fought alongside her brother Icthlarin during the Caridian-Zerosian War, and she helped bring the Majorat to Gielinor. She was, by every account, on the right side of that conflict. Then the war ended, and something just broke within her. The leading theory is that witnessing the Majorat and their brutality, the particular flavor of horror they brought with them, had pushed her towards madness. The goddess of rebirth began devouring the souls she was supposed to guide. She destroyed her own temples. When her own people rose up and cursed her into a weakened form, stripping her of her ability to gather willing disciples, she retaliated by cursing them and binding her priests to walk the world as cats, which ironically she would then become deathly afraid of. She is, by the time of the tombs of Amascut, a demi-goddess trapped in a diminished state, feared by almost no one, dismissed as a relic, running a long con that almost nobody saw coming. But here is what Amascut actually did, and it is considerably more methodical than framing suggests. See, she needed divine energy, or enough to ascend from her diminished demigod state to true godhood. She found a mechanism for transferring that energy. The Wardens, two ancient automations, built by Tumakin himself, one that was imbued with his divine essence, the other with Alidnus's. Machines specifically designed to drain and transfer divine power between beings. After Tumakin sacrificed himself to end the Corrodian-Zerosian War, Pharaoh Osmunton was tasked by Alidnus to hide the weapons the gods had used, including the Wardens, in his tomb within a pyramid. They were to be sealed away and never to be used again. See, Amascut wanted them as the catalyst, but the Wardens needed something to drain. She needed divine energy loaded into them first, which meant she needed gods, specifically Scabarus, Upmunkin, Het, and Krondus, the four lesser deities, demigods of the Menethite pantheon, and she captured every single one of them through individual, tailored deceptions that she had been running in parallel across centuries. Scabarus first, Amascut found Kefri, a Dawn Scarab who desperately wanted children smarter than herself to preserve her race and knowledge. Amascut promised her exactly that, then delivered children with the intelligence of a common locust, and destroyed Kefri's mind entirely, while technically making them smarter than her, in the most vicious possible reading of the deal. As Kefri's consciousness faded, she called out for Scabarus. The god answered and then walked straight into Amascut's trap. Upmunkin next. Baba was a baboon matriarch, a formidable leader who feared her tribe would fall apart under her successor. Amascut promised her a way to rule over her tribe forever, and Baba accepted. But then Amascut killed her and her entire tribe, revived them as undead thralls, and used the army to capture Upmunkin. Het was more personal. Akka was a warrior who had joined a cult called the Children of Rebirth. They were dedicated to Amascut's original form as goddess of rebirth and planned a mass suicide ritual to be reborn in perfection. However, the goddess of rebirth was long gone, and the ritual called out to the Devourer instead. Akka survived, poisoned but not dead, caught between life and death. Amascut sealed him in a sarcophagus, locking him in that tormented state permanently. Then she used him as bait. Akka had previously devoted himself to Het, and Het came for his former follower. But Akka, furious at what he saw as abandonment, overwhelmed Het, and Amascut took him. And Krondus, a crocodile named Zabak, who had abandoned Krondus's values and resourcefulness to indulge in pure gluttony. He offered to help Amascut capture Krondus in exchange for never going hungry again. She agreed, then cursed him so that everything he ate turned to dust, and prevented him from dying of natural causes, perpetual starvation, eternal life, the exact opposite of what he had been promised, and she considered the deal technically fulfilled, because he would never go hungry in the sense of having nothing in front of him to eat. 4 demigods, 4 centuries, 4 betrayals crafted with that particular precision that only someone with infinite patience and genuine contempt for everyone around her could sustain. With the 4 lesser deities imprisoned and brought to Osmunton's tomb, the mechanism was set. The Wardens would drain their captured divine energy and transfer it to Amascut. Tumakin is gone, having been sacrificed during the war. Alidnus is absent. Ictharin is so consumed by his work in the underworld that he barely surfaces anymore. The Menethite pantheon is already running on empty. If Amascut completes the ascension and the 4 lesser gods are drained, there is no counterforce. There is no one left in the region with the power or the authority to push back. Menephos, the last major Menethite city, had already been compromised. Amascut during that time had been controlling the pharaoh. Sophonim was quarantined, and the Scabarites were her agents. The groundwork for a desert with no divine protection, no ruling structure, and a newly ascended goddess of destruction sitting at its center had been laid over centuries. The tombs of Amascut, what is considered to be a last-ditch intervention in a plan that was already almost complete. You walk into a pyramid where the trap has been fully built, the prisoners are already taken, and the machine is already running. The adventurer moved into the tomb already behind. The lesser gods were freed from their guardian's control. Kefri, Baba, Akka, Zabak defeated one by one, but weakened, unable to directly confront Amascut themselves. All they could do was open the lower level. In the lower level, Amascut, who had already claimed that the Wardens had strengthened her and activated them to dispose of the player and teleported away, is confident enough in the outcome that she didn't feel the need to stay and watch. The Wardens were then defeated. Amascut appeared as a phantom, devoured the Warden, and was gone to somewhere unknown, with whatever she managed to absorb before the plan collapsed. The Ascension didn't complete, and the 4 lesser gods survived. The desert still has a pantheon, technically, but Amascut is still out there, still a demi-goddess who came closer to full godhood than anyone in the region had recognized, with the consequences far too great. It's best we don't think of it. Of the 3 near misses, this is the one where the lore is most consistently misread. The Dragonkin are presented visually as some kind of big angry dragon wizard threat, and their creation, Galvek, is framed as the final challenge of the legendary Dragon Slayer questline. The game wants you to feel accomplished. What it doesn't quite make you understand is that Galvek was not the threat. Galvek was the symptom. To understand what almost happened, you have to understand the mind behind it. Zorgoth isn't presented to you like a typical villain, merely as someone who has reached the ultimate solution. You see, the Dragonkin's numbers were dwindling. That much is stated plainly. The conflicts with humanity had taken a toll on their population. Only a handful of Dragonkin had actually ever attacked humans, but humans, when they struck back, made no distinction between the aggressive ones and the peaceful ones, and neither, Zorgoth says, will he. Quote unquote, humanity is a disease. This sounds like rage, and to an extent it is, but it's also a policy decision, a centuries-old one, reached by a creature who had been sealed in a laboratory beneath a fortress with nothing but time and his own convictions, and the beginning of a plan. Elvarg was the opening move, created as the first dragon specifically engineered to destroy humanity, and by Zorgoth's own admission, a total failure. She attacked Crandor and then was killed. The experiment was noted, the data kept, and the work continued. Multiple laboratories, engineered creatures, and a series of iterations. Zorgoth was never discouraged by Elvarg's death. He saw it more as a pilot attempt to refine his methodology. The real project was in Lithgren, an abandoned Dragonkin fortress northwest of Fossil Island, sealed off by Robert the Strong, the 4th Age hero who spent his life fighting the Dragonkin, and then launched an assault on the island. Zorgoth sealed himself inside it, with his work half finished, and waited. He waited for his kind to come back and reopen the ancient doors, but they never did, so he had hundreds of years in a sealed laboratory to perfect a single creation, a dragon capable of controlling the minds of other dragons. The Dragonkin's word for it was Galvek, which in their language meant fate. Bob the Cat, who of course is Robert the Strong reincarnated, is the one who tells you this indirectly. You have to go into his dream, fight the Guardian blocking his memories, and pull the truth out of a past life he can't access on his own. That's how buried this history is. The evidence of what's coming was locked inside a cat. By the time you reach Lithgren, Zorgoth has been waiting long enough. He sees you, recognizes the player, kills a researcher that you're with named Dallas Jones on the spot with Galvek's Dragonfire, and then he leaves. Galvek smashes through the roof and flies off while Zorgoth begins organizing the dragons for the assault. The kingdoms of Gielinor, Misthalin, Asgarnia, Kandarin, and the Fremennik have never fought anything like this. Individual dragons are treated as legendary threats. Elvarg, a single dragon nesting on a deserted island, required the reconstruction of an ancient map, a reforged key, and a veteran adventurer just to reach it. But what Zorgoth created was a coordinated fleet, under a commander capable of directing every dragon through direct mind control, with a Dragonkin riding alongside. Bob is the one who identifies the actual vulnerability. Kill Galvek, the mental link breaks, the army dissolves. Without that intelligence, the combined fleet of Misthalin, Asgarnia, Kandarin, and the Fremennik sails into a battle they have no framework to win. The counterattack begins. 4 parts of sustained, escalating dragon combat before you ever reach Galvek himself. A series of gradual deployments, with the weakest dragons holding the perimeter, the heaviest hitting last, with Galvek's insta-kill Dragonfire smashing overhead throughout. Then Galvek boards the ship personally. Zorgoth is with him. Galvek fires at you, but Bob the Cat, on his last life, jumps in front of you and takes it. When Galvik falls, the last dying dragonfire shoots backwards. Zorgoth is completely incinerated by his own creation. The army, without Galvik's mind holding it together, dissolves. That was the margin. You on a ship in the middle of an active battle. Just one player, you. Between that and who knows what. This is where it gets quietly unsettling. If you completed While Guthix Sleeps before finishing Dragon Slayer 2, an additional cutscene plays after the quest ends. Back in the Lithcrin Vault, 3 dragonkin break free from their chambers. They note that Zorgoth is dead. They also note that somebody has used the Stone of Jas, and they make a decision. They will bring terror to the mortals who wish to claim its power. Zorgoth acted alone. He built it all alone and waited. These 3 were simply dormant, and now they're awake and coordinated in a way that Zorgoth never was. The quest log says quest complete. The Lithcrin Vault says something else entirely. 3 near misses. 3 times the margin was on you. But come here for a sec, let me tell you something. None of these threats actually ended. The darkness in the Lassar Undercity is still there, contained for now, but Sliske walked away with the Elder Horn. He told you directly that you'd make a worthy vessel, that you'd meet again in the north. Whatever he's planning with an artifact capable of subjugating entire armies, that conversation isn't finished. Amascut the Devourer, who never really died in that pyramid, appeared as a phantom, devoured the Warden and left. Centuries of work disrupted in one raid, and she's still out there, still a demigoddess, still the only being in the Caridian region with both the motivation and the patience to try again. And the Lithcrin Vault. 3 dragonkin just woke up. They know Zorgoth is dead. They know someone used the Stone of Jas. The lore says you bought time, but I ask how much? That's the question nobody in Gielinor is asking loud enough. If you want me to go deeper on any of these threads, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. I'll be back next week with another video. See ya.